The Spiritual Handyman, bringing spiritual tools to the hands of the people who need them. Sponsored by the Eagle Heart Foundation. The Eagle Heart Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that brings charitable contributions and educational enhancements to the people. So how can you be a part of the Spiritual Handyman and the Eagle Heart Foundation? The Triple Win Situation. This book was written by Granddaughter Crow, and half of the proceeds go to the Eagle Heart Foundation, which in turn sponsors the Spiritual Handyman. How to get it one? It's on Amazon and Kindle for only $9.99. So we are here to bring tools to you. Thank you so much, Spiritual Handyman. We believe in what you do.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Handyman Internet TV show. This episode, we're going to be talking about awareness with Jennifer Lonnberg. Excited to have her on the show today. And of course, she's got some amazing tools and techniques for us to apply right away in our lives, keeping in mind that the Spiritual Handyman is available on YouTube and thespiritualhandyman.com, Instagram, Facebook. Jump on all the social media and check us out. Be sure when you watch the show to subscribe and send those comments down into the comment box. Push all the fun buttons and click all the cool stuff and help us get the word out there and be a part of the community. And the Spiritual Handyman is all about getting spiritual tools into the hands of the people that need them. So today, like I said, we are going to be talking to Jennifer Lonnberg about awareness. And Jennifer is a psychic and spiritual healer. She's also a mentor, a Christian, an author, and a speaker. She is an amazing lady and a personal friend. She also has a book that she's written that I have a copy of, Embodied Grace, the 90-day creation journal, a very successful and a wonderful way to get in touch with yourself and manifesting techniques that you can bring into your life. So highly recommend that. Jennifer's also got another book that she is going to tell us a little bit about. So Jennifer, how about you introduce yourself and share your other book with the folks?
Well, thank you for having me on today. I'm super excited to be here. These conversations to me are always super, super fun. So I'm excited to get into the juicy part. But that being said, I am a Christian psychic, which a lot of people are like, what? Like, that's an oxymoron. But it really is. I have always been psychic. I've always had that connection. And for whatever reason, I've always been able to just see. And so to me, Jesus and the angels were always around, and it was not because I was at church, but because it just was. Does that make sense? Yeah. So to me, that's how I always, that's how I identify myself. And that's my self-awareness, is I do love the Christian part because I love the community of church. I love the people there. I love all of those kind of things, but I'm also on the psychic spectrum where some of the people in church don't understand it. So I like to always make that really clear, because in the beginning, sometimes people are like, what did she just say? So that's kind of it. My very first book was called Embodied Grace, A Woman's Path to Empowerment. And it's really about understanding how to truly be authentic to who you are. And I know that sounds like a buzzword, but it's really, really digging into who you really are and what you really like and what you're really good at and what you're gifted with, right? And in order to do that, you have to let go of what everybody else says you're supposed to do or you should do, or this is how we do it, and all of those kind of things. And you have to really get in tune with yourself to find out what is it you really want in life and what is it you really enjoy. And part of that comes with self-awareness, which is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's great to have you on. I love your level of enthusiasm, and I love your ideas about helping people at the most basic, their basic needs, right? You have a really unique perspective and a unique opportunity to share with people what it's like to be in that church environment, be in that Christian environment, and have those gifts kind of unfold. Could you help our folks understand what maybe that was like for you as those gifts started to develop, and how did you breach that subject? Like, how did you open that up a little bit?
So I'm really lucky because, well, I'm a redneck kid. Like we're talking Southeast Colorado, middle of nowhere, small towns, all of that kind of stuff. So the church I went to really didn't have any space to talk about that. Like I just didn't ever talk about it. Right. And the older I got, like when I was little, they were like, oh, how cute. She thinks she's talking to the angels, like imaginary friends kind of thing. And then the older I got, the more I realized, I probably shouldn't tell everybody about this. This is probably something we just talk about at home where it's safe and those kind of things. But then, the older I got, especially like teens and 20s, I really tried to shut it down, and it just created a lot of anxiety for me. And so finally, my own life journey, like really wanting to have a better life, is what brought me to really embracing this part of me, because it is part of who I am. And I wasn't really showing that to anybody. It was one of those things that you only do behind closed doors, right? So, which is really funny because I have a new book coming out. I'm just in the formatting process, and it's going to be called The Secret Experiences of a Closet Psychic, because that's really where I was at. I didn't want anybody to know. So it was just in the safety of my own family that kind of knew about it. And then finally, it was just like, some things happened and I was like, okay, God, you did this. You either show me what to do or take it away, and I had prayed for years for it to be taken away, because again, I didn't have, there's some new churches now that are into spiritual gifts and those kind of things. And so prophecy is a new word that people are starting to actually accept, again, in certain spectrums, right? Because religion, there's so many different ones, right? So I was lucky that I was in a pretty laid back. The church environment I grew up in was very, it was a community, it was caring people. I used to laugh and say, if anything's happening, the Methodist women will feed you. like we will bring the food, whatever it is, food can, you know what I mean? That's like our thing is, can we make you a pie or a casserole?
Yes is always the answer to that. Yes.
Always. And so I kind of laugh and jokingly say that, but I mean, I really had a pretty traditional Christian upbringing, but the church I was in was also pretty accepting. So I was lucky in that. But again, it was just one of those things you just didn't talk about.
Well, thanks for sharing that part of it. It's totally understandable that those spaces would put you into a mode of self-protection, right? And okay, maybe I should just shut this down, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, praying for it to be shut down. And I always feel like there's an odd take when we go to church and we talk to the angels, but we're not supposed to talk to the angels. So I always get I was a little bit confused there, because we're talking. That's exactly what we're doing, is talking to spirit, right?
Yeah.
That's why we're there. So
yeah, it's so funny because and it's funny because I actually reference this in my new book too. It says, we sang He Walks With Me and He Talks With Me. Well, duh, He's right here.
And you know what? I can see Him. Imagine that, right?
Yeah. So it was an interesting dynamic, definitely.
I wasn't aware of your new book, but that's really exciting. And I want to thank you for taking the time to get your authentic experience presented in a way that people can consume it, can connect to it, can enjoy it as well. There's so many people that come to me and ask about that my gifts are unfolding and I'm experiencing this, and I'm experiencing that. And I'm always looking for a place to send people so that they can recognize that they're not the only one, right? That there's so many other people out there that are willing to share their experience. And that's really what helps those people that think they're blazing a trail recognize, like, oh, okay, I'm not by myself, but now I have some tools, I have some ways to identify things, and that just makes the learning curve so much easier for them. So
well, and it takes the fear away, right? Like the scare, because when you're in that space, like when I finally was at that space of, okay, you know what? I'm obviously psychic and I have fought against it my whole life and I can't fight against it anymore. What do I do? Like it's scary because I didn't know anybody else that was Christian and psychic. And what do you do with that? And who do you turn to and who do you talk to? Right. So I was lucky to find the community, and you were a part of that in Denver, that I found that I had people that I could actually talk to, and say, this is what's going on. What do I do with this?
Right, right. Well, and you really embodied that right from the beginning. You didn't take any, you took some time off, but from my understanding, there's kind of those middle years, that teenage years to the late 20s, early 30s, where you're kind of supposed to have a regular life in that time frame, and not everybody gets that. So it's, so some folks are connected with spirit so deeply that they stay with it through that time, and then there's others who get that space where they get time off, and you almost have to reconnect and get yourself back into the mode you were in previously and kind of catch up, right? so,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
for a lot of people, there's that gap there, I find. And then there's other folks that continue to have the gift, but they just don't say anything, right? And that brings us to our subject today around awareness, and really looking at how people can recognize whether this is their stuff or whether it is somebody else's stuff, or where it's coming from. So how about if you help our viewers and listeners out a little bit with what your definition is of awareness and why you feel that that's so important.
Okay. So there's so much to this, right? Like, we can go into so many different spectrums and so many different ways of looking at it. But the biggest questions that I have are, how do I know my guides are speaking to me? Like, how do I know it's them and not in my head? And then the other thing that I get is people that are empathic, that feel other people's emotions or feel things around them, and they have no idea like what to do with it or what it is, or what, they don't even understand maybe that they're in a great mood and then all of a sudden they're in a really bad mood. And so that the empath part of it, right? So those are the two biggest questions that I usually get. And it all comes down with first learning to know yourself, right? So you've got to understand when you're connecting with yourself, and this comes into one, self-care, and two, self-awareness. And I feel like they're two separate things. Like, you've got to take care of yourself so that your physical body and your mental body and your emotional body and your spiritual body is going to be ready if you start moving into this spiritual awareness, right? So you've got to know the human part, and you've got to be in a place where you're not going to be freaking out going, what is going on here?
Oh
no. Right? So being in that space of kind of just first starting to be in tune with and aware of your own self, your own space, your own body, your own feelings, those kind of things. Then when you're kind of in that space where you understand that, it sounds so simple, and it is, but it isn't, because you kind of have to practice it. It's just being in a space of having the intention that you do want to connect with spirit, being in a place where you feel safe so that you feel like you have protection, right? So calling on Jesus, guides, angels, whatever that would be for you. And then when you're in that space, you have to be in awareness so that you can know yourself well enough to where if you get an idea that comes in your head, you'll know, I wouldn't have thought of that on my own. So the awareness would then be, this is probably a message from spirit, right? And the awareness part is just about practice, but it's really about being in tune with yourself first. That's my take on it anyway.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm right there with you on how that progresses too. One thing that I've recognized that works for me, and maybe this helps some other people as well, is you get those kind of ahas, or you have that really cool idea and you kind of look at it and go, ooh, is that a message? and what I do is backtrack it. If I can take it back 2 or 3 thoughts, then that was me.
Right.
That was my progression, right? But if it just pops up and there it is, presto changeo, if I've waved a magic wand and something appears, yeah, that's some sort of magic, right? That's not a sleight of hand. That's really intuition or spirit, or a combination of the two things connecting. So
right.
that's what I found. If I can follow the thought pattern, it's most likely me. It's my analytical head. And
right.
Yeah, if it's standalone, then
guess what?
Yeah.
It's really interesting so two things that just came into my head with that. Mine, in the very beginning, I always would get a gut feeling, right? So that comes again back to being self-aware of your body. Like, but when you get that gut feeling, for me, that was always guidance. Like, you know, you shouldn't do this, you should do this, and it's never you know, really rough, like, oh my God, don't do, you know, it's never like that from your guides. It's always a, hey, you might want to think about this. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it may not feel really good to you if you do it, you know. And then the other part would be, but for whatever reason, my guides, some of them especially, talk in language that, I'm kind of a redneck girl, like my language is pretty basic. So when they start talking in like stuff that sounds like old English, I know that it's not coming from me, because those are not words that I would come up with on my own.
Yes, yes, you must consider looking out. That's terrible old English, but I get your
But
point.
you know what? Yeah, like words
Yeah.
that I'm like, what does that word even mean?
Yeah, the verbiage does tend to shift a little, doesn't it? Another thing that just popped up, since we're, you know, allowing that to happen here, is that it also is not going to infringe on your free will.
Right.
If it's, you should do this or you shouldn't do that, which I think should is a kind of a naughty word
Bad
anyway.
word.
But
Yeah.
yeah, bad word. Bad host. I'm gonna tie myself up. Look at that. The beauty of what will come from spirit or come from our gut, our guides, is just that, guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And it won't infringe on our free will or give us a set, you know, don't or
Yeah.
do this.
It's always a loving urge, don't you think? Like it's a
That's
loving
a great
urge
way to
of
put it.
saying, you know, maybe you should look at this, or maybe this would be in your, you know, and it's all about understanding. And I am going to come back to it again, really, when you can be in tune with yourself. And I always tell people, go deep within your soul and trust that. That's probably the hardest part of anything, is truly getting in touch with yourself and being aware of your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own emotions, your own whatever.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that specifically.
Okay.
And what would be some simple ways for people to do that, to get in touch with themselves and their feelings? I mean, the one thing that I can offer in that department is recognizing where it shows up in your body, which we kind of touched on,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it feels like it's low in your body, then you kind of know where it comes from. If it feels like it's on my forehead, I know right where it came from.
Right.
Not the third
Yeah.
eye, that is in my brain. So
Right.
do you have some other indicators that might
So
help people?
yeah, so I actually do this in a workshop, and I just did this a couple weeks ago, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. It's really a good thing to do, and you can do it yourself. So just ask yourself the questions, and I'll kind of walk you through it a little bit. But basically what you'll do is get in a space where you feel comfortable. Now, I usually say meditative space, but some people are like, I don't know how to meditate, I can't do that. Everybody can meditate, because it's just about kind of zoning out. Like, we've all zoned out at some point. So it's just being in a place that you're relaxed enough to kind of zone out a little bit. Okay. So being in a place, if you can just breathe for a couple minutes, you know, or even 30 seconds, whatever it is, just to kind of get relaxed. And then I will say, I will ask, when I hear something from my own self, and it's in my case, I call it the nasty little mean girl, that voice that tells us we can't. Where do I hear that in my head? And usually, or in my body, you know what I mean? And usually there's a certain place, and everybody can have a different place. It doesn't matter where it is, but it'll show up in a certain place, either in your head or in your shoulder or in your heart. Or, I mean, it literally will, when you ask, where is my own nasty little mean voice that tells me I can't? Find that first. Okay. Then you say, okay, thank you for showing me that. That's the negative part. That's part of the human, like, I almost feel like it's part of the human brain. Like, there's some tendency in everybody to have that. It's okay. It's just, you don't want to listen to that part, right? So then again, shake that off and start over and say, okay, now I want to know, when I'm speaking from confidence and I'm connected to my soul, where does that come from? Where does it feel in my brain, my head, my body, whatever? Okay. And you just ask yourself, and then you have to trust what you're feeling, right? And then go to the next space and say, when my guides and angels are talking to me, where do I hear that message? Or where do I feel that message? And it'll be, again, in a different part. So you just go through the basic steps, and it sounds really basic, right? But it really is that simple.
That
So
makes a lot of sense. And looking at the different stages of it, and splitting it up into different communication, that makes sense, because you're not trying to take it all and figure it out. You're just taking one piece at a time. So kind of
exactly.
breaking it down into smaller parts to do that, right? So that's powerful. That's powerful stuff. Thank you.
Well, and that's just part of, again, it comes back to that part of self-awareness, right? Just trusting yourself of, where do I feel this in my body? And you have to be in a space to be ready to actually ask that, right? And then trust it.
Right. And so many people, like you said, have that they have that misconception around meditation and what that means.
Yeah.
And we tackled that a little bit when we did spiritual jargon in episode 1,
Oh, that's good.
defining those words. And we talked about meditation, and recognize that it really is what it is for you. And it can be anything. Meditation really is just about quieting the mind, and even a little bit is still a step in the right direction. And however that works for people to get in touch with that part of the quietness, everybody has that. Even the people who don't think meditation is a thing, they still have their morning coffee and read the paper, and in a way that is its own style of meditation for those people that use that to relax and unwind, or to start their day on the right path, right?
And you know what? Exactly what you're talking about is another part of awareness. What is it for you? Because everything is different for everybody, but it's based on what is it for you, right? So in that situation, what kind of a meditation person are you? Are you an active meditation where you actually do better meditating, like running or walking or doing an activity? Or are you better at sitting down and being on a mat and spending your time there in meditation? Or is it just that you need to breathe? Or do you have your coffee and and look at nature? There's all kinds of different ways to meditate.
I agree. And like you said, drawing that back to the awareness, and being in the moment that you're sitting in, that's
That's it.
when your awareness is at its highest level, in my opinion. Because if you're looking behind you, you're looking at the collective experience, and if you're looking forward, you're making something up, right? So if you're present, you're in the moment, you're aware of what's going on around you. And nature is a perfect place to do that, because I know in my backyard there's squirrels, birds, and bunnies, and just allowing that to unfold, and watching them and seeing what they're doing, or watching my pooch run around the yard. I'm very in the moment, watching that happen and being there with it. So it's so simple to get to that place. And I think people have such they have such a goal-oriented view of things. It's hard to recognize how simple the things we're already doing are, falling into those categories,
Or
right?
thinking it has to be a certain way, right? Like, I think that's what holds us back from so many things. And meditation is the same thing. I taught a class years ago, and I remember the lady, it was so funny. She's like, I can't sit there in the position for that long. And I said, is that what you think meditation is? And she goes, well, yeah, I can't do it. And I started laughing. I said, it doesn't have to be that. It very well can be. Like, if that's what's good for you and that's feels good, it can be, but it doesn't have to be that. So I think it's one of those things that you get something in your mind that it has to look a certain way, and then you feel like you can't do it.
Right. And we get that kind of programming, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we all are subject to in one way or another. I know that there are days that that the programming wins, and I know there are days that my intuition wins. So it's a process. And even when you're very connected to spirit, this third dimensional world is where we're at, right? That's where we're grounded. So
You
we're
gotta be
gonna
human.
we're going to come back to it. And it's okay to be human. If we were, I often tell people, if we were perfect, we'd be little puffs of light, right?
Oh
We'd be little
man, I
balls of
know.
light. We would not be sitting here. And
No.
honestly, this place is pretty fun. There's some stuff to do here. I kind of dig it. I'm all right. Not everybody feels that way, but I think there's a lot about the awareness for me that has heightened that, to be very willing to be in the present and be in the moment and be with people when when you're with them, and be present with them, not click 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 on your phone, or checking your email in your head or whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it sounds so simple, but it sounds almost overrated now, right? Because people talk about it all the time, and like mindfulness and all of these words that are getting thrown out there. I mean, it's great because we need to be talking about these things, but again, there's like, I'm kind of from the just regular old Joe kind of people, you know what I mean? But it's knowing that you don't have to be a certain way, and it's accessible to everybody. Like, this divine connection that we have really is accessible to everybody. Just don't make it so hard. Right? Just like make it simple and it's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
And then getting to that place is easier than folks think, because it's really simple to knock the things off that don't work, right? Like you said, the
right?
lady with the ohm position, not her
Yeah,
thing.
no.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Go wash the dishes. I can guarantee you, if you wash the dishes by hand, you'll kind of in a meditation. That used to be one of my favorite places, because in our old house, the sink actually overlooked a field in the back, because we didn't have any neighbors behind us. It was an open field back there, and I literally would do dishes, and that was my meditation. I had a dishwasher, but I didn't use it because I like to be in that space of actually watching the dishes, watching outside, just being in the moment. It can be that simple. You can make anything into a space of becoming aware and being completely present, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, that's perfect, and very grounded. You're a grounded individual, and that's one thing I've always loved about you. And you always go with the simple route. And I'm a country girl, and
Yeah.
this is how it
Why
is
make
for
it
me.
hard?
Yeah, exactly. And while we miss you in the big city, I do understand why you prefer it out in the fields and in the open space. So I would like to give you an opportunity to share with people how they can find you, and what sort of services and things that you offer. And please squeeze in there when your new book's coming out.
Okay, well, I don't know yet exactly when the
Oh,
book is coming out. I
well,
barely just
thanks for
started.
that, Jason. Good host. Good job.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's no big deal. It'll come out when it's right. Like, well, and I threw that on you because we hadn't talked about that yet. But I've had it written, and I had it. I've got the formatting done, so I'm in the process of like starting to get the book cover together and things like that. So it should be before the end of the year for sure. But at the latest January. So if you are on my Facebook or my website, which is Jennifer Lonnberg, so www.jenniferlonnberg.com, you can sign up for my email list there. You can follow me on Facebook. I have a free Facebook community where we actually talk about things like this as well. And no question is dumb. Right? So just ask what it is. Like, it's no big deal. And there's a lot of people in there who are in the awakening process. Some people are already have been awakened. It's a whole big group, a community of people where it's just safe to talk about everything, because again, I feel like it has to be about life. You have to be human, and you also, well, I want to help people understand that they can bring that divine spark and that divine connection in to the everyday life. So
That's a tremendous goal, and I am right there with you. Is recognizing that there's so many things that you can ground into your experience. It's really not supposed to be as hard as it's made out to be on this
right.
crazy rock that we're spinning around on. And I think it's important to point out to folks that Lonnberg is Lonnberg. So Jennifer Lonnberg, Lonnberg, so that you're finding the right lady, of course. And I will be posting her information and her links, her bio, and all the stuff you'll need to reach out to Jennifer or learn more about her in the description, of course, for the video. And feel free to check that out and comment. Let us know how you like the episode. I want to say again to you, Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us today and talking about this great subject of awareness. You have so much to offer. We could talk for a very long time, but I think we did really great with this subject today. And thanks so much for agreeing to be a guest.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited, and I love talking about all of this stuff. I mean, because it's part of life. We need to talk about it.
Yeah, people need to know.
Yeah.
You need to know. So I would love to entertain having you back on the show. I'd love to invite you back to talk about your book too, and talk about some of those experiences, because I feel like that authentic style of sharing really helps people out at a deep level, and gives folks an opportunity to recognize that there's more than just one person having similar experience, right?
Exactly.
Would love
No,
to.
absolutely. That'd be fun. That'd be super fun. I'm all in.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for watching and listening. We appreciate that you participate in the community and that you're part of the Spiritual Handyman, the show, the podcast. Please take the time to like, subscribe, comment, do all the fun stuff. And we will see you next time. And again, thank you, Jennifer Lonnberg, and thank you to the Spiritual Handyman community. It's all about getting the spiritual tools into the hands of the people that need them the most. Have a good one. Take care.
Yep. Bye, everybody.